Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with 16 fabulous, oh my God, fabulous sets of piano variations. Now, themes and variations are so much fun to listen to, and they're wonderful for beginners, although this is not a beginner's list specifically. Some of you have questioned why some lists are beginner's lists and some lists aren't. The answer is because I say they are. There's the only reason we need, isn't it? But themes and variations are wonderful because they really engage your brain with the way composers develop their material. The only problem with theme and variations works is that they're very sectional. If you want to have, that sort of consistency and drama and overall giant arch of large forms, theme and variations pieces are not generally for you. You need to have more of a sectional approach. You take each variation as it comes, and the fascinating thing about these pieces is that there are a million different ways that you can write variations. Some variations are what we just call ornamental. That is, they take the tune and they just sort of decorate it. You can always hear the tune. You can always tell that it's there. The structure of the tune remains paramount. Other variations take the theme and play with certain aspects of it. They can just play with the harmonies and write completely new tunes over similar harmonies. You can change phrase length. You can take an aspect of rhythm. You can do anything you want. And composers are very, very different in their approach. Some prefer the ornamental style of variations. Others are far less wedded to their theme. Others, like Bach in his Goldberg variations, don't do anything with the theme at all. The variations are all based on the bass line to the theme. So yeah, there's a tremendous amount of variety in this list. And here they are. Here's 16 of them. I think that this is a wonderful way to get your brain engaged in the development of musical materials, which is one of the things that sets classical music apart from popular music idioms. It's that it's not just the size or the forms or whether they're songs or not songs. It's what composers do with the musical material. And this is one of them, those things. So we begin, of course, with Bach's Goldberg variations, one of the great epic variation cycles in the history of the universe. And as I said, the source of the variations is not the theme. It's the underlying bass line, which creates certain sets of harmonies over which Bach can do basically whatever he damn well pleases. And that's what makes it so wonderful. And that's what sustains the length of up to, anywhere from 50 to 70 minutes, depending on how you handle repeats, because variation pieces tend to have repeats. And by the way, composers can vary the repeats. And if a composer varies the repeat, it's called a double variation. Isn't that helpful? Anyway, so we've got Bach's Goldberg variations. Then Haydn, his variations in F minor. Oh, this is a beautiful piece. It's the prototype, actually, of Chopin's Funeral March. Dum bum ba da 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 da. The Haydn has a very similar opening theme, but Haydn had a wonderful, wonderful proprietary variation form, which was a variation on two themes, which are often related, one in a major key, one in a minor key. And he used this variation form in many, 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 many works. Beethoven took it up later, and so did all those big adagios and like Bruckner symphonies and Mahler symphonies and all that are based on two alternating themes. They all have their root in this work by Haydn, the variations in F minor, a wonderful, affecting piece that could have been written several decades later. It's a volcanic piano work, simply stunning. Then we have Reicha. Ooh, Reicha, I love Reicha. He was such a quirky, original guy. Anton Reicha, or Antonin Reicha, Czech composer, active in France. L'art du varier, the art of variation. This is one of these pedagogical / artistic works. It's a theme with dozens of variations, mostly very short. All kinds of weird things happen to it. It's just a marvelous work to get to know. It's a big pedagogical set, sort of like the Goldberg variations and later Beethoven's Diabelli variations, which come next. in our list. The Diabelli variations are one of the great keyboard variation sets after the Goldbergs. There are 3 of them, actually, and we'll get to the 3rd in a minute. I think the Reicha really belongs with them. I think it's one of those magnificent sort of visionary pieces, but it's virtually unknown. So, get to know it, and then we can put 4 fabulous, enormous variation sets for keyboard. And after Beethoven, Mendelssohn, his Variations sérieuses, serious variations. Not a very long work, like in a quarter hour or so. Beautiful, one of Mendelssohn's great piano works, one of the most beautiful romantic variation sets, an enormously coherent set of variations. They flow together quite beautifully. They're absolutely lovely. And after Mendelssohn, Schumann, his ABEGG, ABEGG variations. ABEGG being musical notes and the source of the variations. This was his, I think, Opus 1. It's early Schumann, the work that kind of got him started. And it's quite lovely. It has been performed by most major Schumann pianists, and it's very easy to find. So you can check that one out too. It's not as popular as Schumann's Carnival or David's Bundlertense or Papillon or, his cycles of character pieces. But Schumann was a great variation writer. He was also a great contrapuntist. He doesn't get a lot of attention for his more, intellectual works. He was supposed to be a sort of wild-eyed romantic who wrote, and he was, but he did it all. He did it all, at least for the piano, let's put it that way. And it's a beautiful, beautiful work. Then Liszt, Hexameron. Now, this is a very little-known work by Liszt, because it's not just by Liszt. It's by all the great pianists of the day, Thalberg and Pixis, and, They all wrote a variation, one variation on a theme from, I think it was from I Puritani, or some bel canto opera thing like that. And Liszt assembled it, and wrote interludes and had his own variations and turned it into a single piece. It's a group piece. And there are many works in our history of group variations. In fact, that could be a subject for another talk because they're really fun, where everybody does one. Beethoven's Diabelli variations started out that way. It started out with a publisher, Diabelli, who asked all the major German composers to write a variation. Liszt wrote one of the Diabelli variations originally. And Beethoven took the theme and produced this monster piece, all of his own, which Diabelli published separately as a totally separate work. But he also published the original series by all these different composers, Czerny and Hummel, everybody was floating around. And that actually sometimes gets recorded with the Diabellis as part of a 2-disc set. I mean, they've been done before. So that kind of group piece is really a fun thing to think about. And, that's a topic for a talk, isn't it? I'll have to think about that and come up with something. But Hexameron is delightful. And you get to listen to all these different composers strut their stuff. And you could try to figure out who did what. Now, after Liszt, I would say Alkan. I love Alkan. And his variations, Aesop's Feast, the Festin d'Aesop, the last of his variations in all of the minor keys. Variations, I mean his etudes in all of the minor keys. This is wild. The variations are supposed to be little furry critters or animals, and the theme is this really dun, 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 one of these ba-ba black sheep in the minor key, kind of quirky tunes, and it goes all over the place, and it's all over in 12 minutes, and it's impossibly virtuosic, and oh God, it's fun. It's just incredible fun. Next, Grieg, his Ballade in G minor, which is in variation form. It's actually a theme in variations. It's quite popular, very, very beautiful work. But even though it's popular among pianists and, Griegophiles, the greater universe doesn't know it as well as they should. A lovely, lovely work, and a wonderful set of variations as well. The title Ballade suggests a more free-form, romantic, bardic, storytelling kind of thing. And that's what Grieg does with his variations. You can make up the story yourself as you listen. Then Brahms. Now, Brahms was a great variation writer, and there are bunches of variations for keyboard. There's the Handel variations, which are very nice, but I chose the Paganini variations. They come in 2 books. They are also extremely virtuosic. Very, very difficult, which is sort of atypical for Brahms, because Brahms is known to be virtuosic in a more intellectual way, not just technically. But technically, these are extraordinarily difficult, and they are the ultimate in the sectional variation category. Because, like I said, there are two books of them. They're all based on the Paganini theme, dum pa da 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 dum pa da 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 dum pa da 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 dum bum, which Paganini uses for variations, and which everybody who used it afterwards used for variations, including Rachmaninoff in his famous work for piano and orchestra, the Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini. But the Brahms Paganini variations are very, very beautiful and very different from each other. The two books are different from each other. The individual variations are very different from each other. Brahms is not married so much to his tune, but the variations are little individual gems, and they should be savored as such. Then we get, let's see, Faure, his theme and variations, opus 73. A lovely, lovely work of the French school, typically Faure, a little bit elusive harmonically, flowing, beautifully written, reticent emotionally, maybe just a touch. Faure's music was, I mean, generally speaking, he was a gentle composer for the most part, although some of his chamber music is quite passionate and some of his keyboard music is as well. This is a lovely variation work that's just too little known. And it's a real high point in French Romantic piano music, I think. I mean, that's me, but I really think so. Then Rachmaninoff, not the Paganini variations, his Corelli variations. Now, the Corelli theme is actually La Folia. La Folia is one of those tunes that everybody back in the day did variations on. Every Baroque and earlier composer used La Folia, and so did Rachmaninoff, but he used Corelli's version of it. So he called it the Corelli Variations. This is one of his last works, and it's a major, major compendium of Rachmaninoffian keyboard technique. A beautiful, beautiful work that also doesn't quite get the attention it deserves because, like I said, variation pieces, they tend to be, first of all, sectional, and second of all, emotionally rather cool. They're not as turbulent and exciting as like sonatas or keyboard pieces called things like, you know, Death by Slasher or something like that, you know. So the Corelli variations generally don't get a lot of attention. But again, it's a beautiful, mature work of Rachmaninoff that people really ought to get to know. Now, here's some obscurities. Godowsky, Leopold Godowsky, his Passacaglia on Schubert's Unfinished Symphony. The Passacaglia is what Bach's Goldberg variations is, more or less. It's where you take a bass line and you repeat it and you do things on top of it. And here the bass line is the first 8 bars of Schubert's Unfinished Symphony. You know, do, 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 you know, that thing. The opening, just the opening. And that's what the entire work, and it's huge, is based on. A big, bold, virtuosic, crazy sort of keyboard cult piece. And it's magnificent. It's absolutely magnificent. It deserves to be played every 5 minutes. No, seriously. It's a major, major work in the virtuoso piano tradition, sort of, you know, coupled with this iron-clad, austere, formal gambit to hold the whole thing together. It's a remarkable work. Truly a remarkable work. It deserves far more attention than it gets. So do Copland's piano variations. Now, this is the abstract, spiky, modern variation thing. Sometimes the theme can be sort of hard to discern, which makes the variations even harder to discern. But on the other hand, a work like Copland's piano variations, which is quite modernist, it's the modernist early Copland, it's brilliantly written, and because the theme itself is not the most obvious and distinctive thing, the whole piece coheres wonderfully. You don't have to pay attention. You don't have to notice. You don't have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to the music. But you don't have to pay attention to the fact that you're getting one variation after another. It's an integrated unit, much more than some of the earlier sets of variations where each variation is a separate exposition of an extremely simple and recognizable tune. You know, when the tune gets more complex and things are a lot more harmonically acerbic, then, you know, the tune doesn't matter so much. And you can just pay attention to the flow of the work. This is one of those. And it's a perfectly legitimate and wonderful new take on the variation form. This is also true of Webern's Variations for Piano, Opus 27. Now, Webern, Webern, plunk, bloop, eek, waga, you're never going to hear the theme in the variations. You're just going to hear 5 minutes or so of plink, plonk, squeak, bloop, blip, bloop, bloop, blap, blap. And you may love it or you may hate it, but it's a fascinating piece of music. I guarantee it. Absolutely. Sort of the way Salmonella is fascinating. Well, no, I mean, it's 12-tone. I mean, the variations on a 12-tone theme, you're not going to follow the theme and you're not going to follow the variations. You just have to take it as it comes, as with the Copland, but Copland is tonal and, so maybe a little easier. Webern is Webern-esque, and people either love him or they don't. I happen to think he's wonderful, but, only in small doses. But fortunately, everything he wrote was very short, so it's always small doses. And when the mood takes me, which is maybe twice a year, doesn't have to be more than that. It's a special occasion work, and that's fine. Finally, we come to one of the all-time great variation sets in the history of the universe, with the one that goes with the Bach and the Beethoven, the modern equivalent thereof. And that's Rzewski's The People United Will Never Be Defeated. An extraordinary, formally integrated, enormously brilliant virtuoso extravaganza based on a Chilean workers' protest song. Do-do, 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 do-do. Oh, it's a great tune. Absolutely a great tune. And the variations are amazing. You get some that really stick close to the theme, some that don't. They're all organized in units of 6 that do one kind of variation, and the last variation is a summary of the previous 5, and then the last set of 6 variations is a summary of the previous, sets of variations. I mean, the piece is organized to the last detail, but none of that organization that gives this piece such a feeling of unity does anything to inhibit this sense of freedom and exploration and celebration of piano virtuosity and exploration of the theme itself. Oh my God, it's a masterpiece. It's insane. It just goes to show that, classical music isn't dead, that there are astonishingly great pieces of music still being written all the time. We just have to wade through all the muck to find them. So there you have it. 16 variation sets for you to go and bang your head against, and your ears and everything else as they're banging on the keyboard. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.